Sega, while you were there, managed several systems. So you had Genesis, you had Sega CD, you had Game Gear, and they were still supporting Master System for a bit
Yes,
there. And there was the backwards compatibility, the power base converter for
absolutely.
Master System, and then for Game Gear there was the Master Gear, right? Master Gear converter. So how was it managing this plethora of systems? Because I think 32X was after your time.
Yes, thankfully, I killed 32X at least 4 times. I had to leave for them to finally do it. I just hated that product. And I still hate that product.
Oh, I'm a big fan.
It, well, the problem with 30, here you have Sega CD at $150 or whatever the price was, but and there's a rationale for why it's there, and it's offering here's the next generation of gaming, optical disc, and CD. As a consumer, you find value in that, and as a company, it was an very important product for us because the whole CD landscape was just so new, and understanding what you can go and do with CD capability, and then how can you go and put them into great games, it's and take things up from the step of CDI.
Not hard to do.
Not hard to do, but that's kind of what the standard was.
Oh, now you're making fun of a console I love.
And well, happy. It's just like we don't need how many encyclopedias on I'm not going to go and buy a system for its encyclopedia, though we did give you a free encyclopedia when you bought Sega CD, but it was free. It's just like I feel back when I was working in college at Radio Shack. It's the kitchen recipe software. That was still hanging around on CD based stuff. So you're trying to figure out what can you do with video, what can you do with audio, what can you go and do with all this additional space, what can you do with characters and moving around. And so Sega CD was an important learning ground for Sega and our third parties
And Sony.
excuse me, and learning the capabilities of what this was. So that was very important, and it was rightfully so where we needed to, focus our efforts as we were getting ready to go and, later introduce what was going to be a primarily CD-based system.
So who is the target audience for Sega CD? Was it your average, 15, 13, however many old gamer, or was it more an adult target audience?
It was more psychographics. It's an early adopter, technology adopter, who are going to go and do that, who are very, very into gaming. It was probably and also very much our core, our most loyal customers who had to have every new game that was coming out. They always wanted the latest and greatest things. It's the early mover, the people who went and were buying Genesis, when you played Nintendo, and they were the ones who were going, no, I see here's what the difference is, and being able to do that and want to have it from there. And then as time goes on, then it starts to become more mainstream in terms of becoming more mass market. And that happens as you start going and getting more games out, and you start showing the second generation of titles, which is typical for how game systems work. You get the early adopters who are fine with your first generation of games because they want what is great and now. And then as your library expands, as they hear good things about it, and as the second generation and third generation of games come, that's when you start getting the mass market. Sonic was a third generation game. It's not something we could have done on the first generation of Genesis because you're still learning the dev systems. What's there on the specs, but really, how can you go and make this thing sing? And how can you go and do that? And it takes you at least to the second generation, more to the third generation of any new console before you have that capabiliity.
You got to fine tune the blast processing.
Yeah, you actually have to fine tune the blast processing. It's the degonklator and being able to take the degunculator to go and optimize that blast processing.
Got a lot of lab
Yes.
coats.
The guys who are in that secret room working on that blast processing optimization, you're not even allowed in that room for at least 18 months.
I wanted to say something about the Sega CD. It was actually the first commercial I ever saw for it when I was younger. And it's with, God, I can't remember the actor's name, but he's playing Bebop in the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, talking to or he's more yelling at the kid about the Sega CD as he's sitting on the chair.
Yeah.
I remember that commercial has stuck with me forever because when I first saw that, because I was a Sega kid growing up, I pretty much sprinted to my mom and was like, I got to get a Sega CD. Like, this is necessary. So I wanted to say that marketing worked on me.
And that was part of the great advertising of Good Be Berlin. And it was part of our initial campaign. I saw one of the questions that was posted. What questions do you want to ask Al Nilsen?
Yeah.
And, somebody asked about the Sega CD advertising. So I actually went and looked back at the ads. And I also looked at Goodby when they did their initial pitch to us, did a 1-minute video starring 2 writers who were describing what they were going to do with the Sega CD commercial. And it was a very strange thing. The 2 writers, they were both naked, holding their scripts in front of them. Need I say more? It was just very.
My God.
It was just they just wanted to show here's kind of what this attitude that we're going to go and take, and it was very funny. But it was like, here's what we want to accomplish with the Sega CD ads, and they took you through what the general feeling would be for it. It was hilarious, and then looking at the actual ads that were produced, it encompassed that spirit. It was fun. But the other funny thing was we had put together a sales kit that we would send out to the retailers, and about the CD-ROM system, and included a videotape on VHS, which, as I look back at it, it's kind of like, okay, we're selling optical disc, but then again, nobody had DVD players back then, so we have to go and explain it on VHS.
Isn't that we have that disc in outer space that if an alien civilization finds it, the first thing that's printed is how do you access the information on this?
Yes.
So I guess the idea of sending the information to something communicatable works.
Yeah, I get a small laugh out of that, but I laugh easily.
Some of those big campaigns, the Sonic releases, some of that was like the beginnings of having like a universal game launch date.
Sonic Tuesday.
Yeah, Sonic Tuesday. Now, earlier when you were talking about Penney, you were saying how like you'd get them when you got them, and you're trying to get the word out as quickly as possible. Logistically, now that you were introducing the idea of a set date, but you're working it from the other end,
it was insane.
How did that even?
Well, I had wanted to do a street date for the longest time because I knew that I wanted to create an event. I wanted to create something huge and big. Every time it's brought up, it's kind of like, that there's just no way that's going to happen because retailers are not going to go and, keep the thing in a box sitting in the back room until your street date, no matter how many big signs it has and how many warnings they get from their corporate offices. There's going to go and be some store manager in Dubuque and who just wants to play Sonic 2. And so, one day he just can't wait anymore. The thing's been sitting there for a week and a half, and he opens it and puts the thing on sale. And what happens is that when that happens at the store at one end of the mall, the store at the other end of the mall going, hey, he's selling Sonic 2. So he starts selling it. And then the guy across town sells it. And then every store in Dubuque, and then every store in the Midwest, and your street date is broken. And all of your efforts to go and, manage your marketing and manage your dollars have just gone to waste. And there's just, and even the retailers will go and tell you, we can go and say that we're going to go and fire everybody in the store who does this, and that doesn't matter. It's going to happen anyway. And the retailers are telling you, there's just no way around this. And the only way around it is to go and get it to the store the day before.
Yeah, you got a Santa
It's
Claus
there.
it.
You got a Santa Claus it. And FedEx is expensive. You're shipping by normally what happens is you ship by truck and you ship to the Toys R Us warehouse or the Software Etc. warehouse, and then they ship it out to their stores. You don't ship directly to the stores, and that takes time and effort to do there. And the only way to do it is it's all about logistics, and it's we knew what the solution was. It's just that you can't go and afford the solution. The whole Sonic 2 thing was, Madeline and I were presenting the very next day the entire Sonic 2 marketing plan, and this was in February of '92, to the rest of the senior management team. Tom and Paul and Shinobu and EB and Diane and Dave Rhodes, our head of sales. We're going over the last of our presentation. This is pre-PowerPoint days, so everything's on foils on overhead projectors for an overhead projector. I'm looking at it, and it is the most extensive video game marketing launch that's ever been done. It's wonderful. It's fabulous. It blows out of the water anything that's great. It was, pure Sega. And we had tie-ins with lots of different people and a major promotion with Nickelodeon. And I'm looking through this and I just say, it's not good enough. And Madeline looks at me as if I'm crazy because we know that it's awesome. And I'm just going, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not big enough. I use the term, it's not Sonic worthy. What do you want? And I had no idea what I want. I just know this isn't it. We had a heated discussion, and then all of a sudden, something clicked in my mind. And I went and I said, we're going to do a street date, but we're going to go and do it globally. And we're going to have the first global launch of a video game system, of a video game cartridge. It's all going to happen on this one day. And it was like, yeah, that's huge. Okay, how are we going to do it? We don't know, but that's what we're going to do. And we'll figure it out later. And then we go and start saying, okay, what day should this be? Okay, movies come out on Friday. Shouldn't be on a Friday. You can't go and do it on a Sunday or Monday because you have to get it to the stores the day before. So we keep going through it. Tuesday, Sonic Tuesday.
Too fast, too cool.
Well, that was the other thing. If you read in the book, the crazy thing where we start writing the puns and printing the puns out, that was all a search for a tagline. And we ran out of room in my office, and we took Ellen Beth's glass wall facing out into the rest of the office. And we just start putting up these two puns. And the rest of the marketing department just comes running in and starts putting up their puns. And they have no idea why we're doing this. But they all see that the puns have the number 2 involved. And they're adding it. And it's just getting covered. And there's probably 100 different puns that are printed out on this wall. And Matt and I are just standing back. And we're looking like, okay, we like that one. How about if we take that one and compare it to that? And we went and came up with 2 fabulous taglines. The tagline for Sonic Tuesday itself, which was too fast, too cool, today. But most importantly, we came up with a tagline which was for the pre-sale period, the 90 days before Sonic Tuesday. And that was, are you up to it? And that was a challenge to gamers. Can you go and handle what Sonic 2 is all about? You think you were really good. It also implies that Sonic 2 is going to be a more challenging, deeper game than Sonic 1 was going to be about. And then we had that fabulous poster of Sonic and Tails, and you just see them from the back. So you have no idea, the silhouette, and you have no idea what Tails is, except that he's orange, he's furry, and he's got 2 tails. And you've got Robotnik there who's just, menacing looking around with the giant 2, and it's, are you up to it? And that also became a rallying cry internally because of logistics challenges. Are we up to what we have to go and do? And then we went, and when I introduced it at our big sales meeting at Boca Raton to all the retailers, I ended my speech with, I just have one question for you. Are you up to it? And because the challenge to them was to make Genesis the number 1 selling game of the console of the year, and to make Sonic 2 the number 1 selling cartridge of the year. And I wanted to know, are they up to it? And then I ended with, I know you are, and I walked off the stage. So it was just amazing how that crazy, afternoon of just writing puns really helped set a direction. And then once we had the taglines, Matt and I went back into my office. We went and rearranged the marketing plan. We added Sonic Tuesday in and redid the entire plan to present the very first thing the next morning. And we spent 45 minutes presenting to the rest of the senior staff, and ended, and it was a giant core dump on them. And there was just this silence. And then finally Tom spoke up and said to David, our VP of sales, what do you think? And he took a long breath and shook his head and goes, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we have to. And in those two sentences, Sonic Tuesday was greenlit. It changed, the meeting changed from what are we going to do to how are we going to accomplish this, and figuring out the logistics, and then finding a partner in Emory Air Freight for what we called the Great Sonic Airlift. And it became the largest single shipment to 13,000 doors that had been done in the air freight industry. We got it to every single store the day before. I think there was a handful of stores that didn't get it. And we had special couriers which delivered it to those stores the hour before the store opened. So every one of those 13,000 stores had Sonic 2. It was a global event that, we started in Japan, went to Europe, and finished in the US. Became a major PR event and really helped establish, how video games were going to be sold.
It's an industry standard
it's the industry standard. And it all started with the words, this isn't big enough. And it's all about, don't be afraid to dream big. And most importantly, we had a phenomenal team that was able to go and figure this out. And if you look at the initial plan that Matt and I presented and what we actually did, Sonic Tuesday was even bigger and had more things on it than what Matt and I had produced, because everybody added, here's something else we can do. Here's what's going to make it bigger. And Tom called his counterpart in Europe, Nick Alexander, president of Sega Europe, and Nick said, absolutely, I'm on board, without hesitation. And Shinobu called Nakayama, and Nakayama said, we're on board without hesitation. It was just, everything just came. So, it went from what would normally just be, an American event to something that was global. Incredible.
Didn't Sega of Japan spring it early on you guys?
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
Okay, we'll skip that.
It does speak to the confidence, though.
They launched it. They launched it Saturday, and they have never explained why they went and did it, and they hid it from us. I found out about it in one of the Japanese video game magazines, where I happened to see a story, and I'm going, which was all in Japanese, and I knew it was Sonic Tuesday, and it was like, that's not the date, and that's how we found out that they had changed the date on us. And we found out just a few weeks before it happened.
In Console Wars, there's a lot of talk about the cultural differences between Sega of Japan and Sega of America. And there's a story that you tell that I particularly like, and I actually wrote a paper on this in one of my college classes, about how you're at the sushi place, and it's that sucker fish, that puffer fish that could kill you. And so you concluded that these are great people, they work hard, but the difference is that they didn't want to win at all costs like you guys did. So what other kind of cultural differences between you guys and your counterparts in Japan?
Well, first of all, I want to know, did you get an A on the paper?
100%.
Okay, good. That's good. I did not want to.
It was on courage and business leadership.
Okay, first of all, I believe I'm the only person that Sega Japan has tried to kill. Here's the crazy thing about it was, it's a pretty over the top story, but it was actually even more over the top than that, because, here they are, and I pick up the plate, after at first they were shocked that I would eat it, because they thought that this was going to be the biggest joke, and they would finally, they would get, me, and they could go and make a fool. Ha ha! He won't eat the blowfish. He won't eat the fugu, and that ain't going to happen. And I knew all about fugu, and I knew what happened to do, and had to be served by a licensed fugu chef. And they were shocked when I picked up, the first piece of fugu. It's clear, it's translucent, and has absolutely no taste. And though you do feel your lips tingle, and you're not sure if that's your brain talking or if it's actually making your lips tingle, which is really weird. And they were in shock. It was they couldn't believe that I was eating the fugu. And then I went and decided to turn the tables, and I picked up the fugu and I said, I can't thank you so much for presenting this wonderful delicacy to me. I take this as a giant honor. I thank you so much. But there is so much here. I must share this delicacy with you. I cannot go and have this honor by myself. So please, I want you all to have a piece. And I pick up the plate and I put it in front of the person, and they are all recoiling back in fear. And I bring it around to every single person, and not one. It looked like I was holding a gun to their face.
It was literally Russian roulette, but
it was, and not one. And the table had turned, and I said, "Well, then thank you once again for this honor." And I finished all the fugu by myself. And it's so that was happening. The next year, I'm invited out by another group of people from Sega Domestic Marketing, and we start walking to a restaurant. And once again, this was very unusual for dinner, because normally we'd get in a cab and go to Central Tokyo. And the only people I've ever walked with was the Fugu group to dinner. And we're heading down, and I'm going, I've been on this street before. I've been in this restaurant before. Oh no, it's going to happen again. And I'm in the same dining room, sitting on the same floor, and I'm getting the same exact speech. We have this wonderful delicacy for you that we have chosen. It is a very special honor. The whole thing, it was like they had a script. And I got served fugu a second time. And, well, Blake didn't put it in there because he says no one will believe it. I ate, and once again, I ate the fugu and I did the pass around, and it was exactly the same thing. And what I think happened was the first group was so embarrassed that I ate the fugu and offered it to them that they never told anybody, and probably said that, no, he insisted we take him to his favorite restaurant in Tokyo. And when they heard about this other group wanting to do it, they started insisting to them, oh, you should take him for fugu. I think that's what happened. And nobody else at SOA had ever been taken to fugu. I don't know. It seems so orchestrated. I don't know if this was something that they did with lots of other visitors from around the world. I had never heard of that. But lucky me, I got it twice, and I turned the tables on them twice. But it was just a strange story. And I know that chapter. It's a great chapter, and just has so many other stories in it, including 32X. It is Blake's favorite chapter, as well as the favorite chapter of a lot of people, but it was very, very strange. And also, the other thing is that chapter is, what I've been told, is the inspiration for people getting 100% on college papers.
Yes, now you know.
I'm going to start a newspaper call it, because I didn't know you did it twice. I'm going to call it Street Fugu 2.
No, it could be. That would be good.
Electric Fugaloo.
Electric Fugaloo. The thing about Fugu, it has no taste at all. I remember watching.
Now it's good, because then you don't get the taste for it. You don't get hooked.
No, there's nothing to get hooked about it. It was just like, yeah, give me some of that soy sauce to go and give it at least some flavor. But it's and by the way, that restaurant is still there. I checked into it last year. It still is there serving fugu. So if you're ever in Japan, I recommend the one by Sega headquarters.
Do they do the picture on the wall if you outlive the fugu?
No. There's
you need two angles.
No, it was just it's a delicacy. I don't even want to know how much it cost, you know. Well, and the funny thing is Blake wrote in it, and there was a hospital down the road. There was. And it's like, how did you know, Blake? You know, it was just like, okay. But
he did an amazing job researching that.
He did.
Book. So
research the hospital. I was not surprised.
If he says there's a hospital around the corner from the Fugu restaurant, I'm sure he's been there.
There was. You know, it's right there on the main road, halfway between Sega and the Fugu restaurant.
Or something.
But you know, it's 10 people a year die from Fugu, primarily Fugu fishermen, who prepare it for themselves.
Raw, right?
Yeah, we're handling it raw.
Mm-hmm.
The deaths do not seem to be from people eating it in licensed Fugu restaurants. So, but yes, I highly recommend it.
So what do you think the main difference between how successful your marketing was in the US and how not successful Mega Drive marketing was in Japan?
You know, the markets are different, you know, in terms of it. And Sonic was not as big a success in Japan as it was in the rest of the world. You know, I think that, you know, we were much more aggressive. I don't believe in one-size-fits-all marketing. Campaign that's in the U.S. is not going to go and necessarily fit in Japan or in Europe. You know, how Sega's market in Europe was very different as it was marketed in the U.S., but it was very key to, you know, what the marketplace was demanding. But I think that there's, you know, an aggressiveness of how you go after the marketplace. Yeah, Nintendo is this major force, and so therefore, you know, that can go and constrain you. But that we never felt that was a problem. We wanted to go and do that. I also think that what we took very great pains at was making sure that we did things on our time, not on everybody else's time. You know, going back to 1991, January CES, it was, you know, a really dull and boring. We didn't have any news to share, and it was a very dull show. You know, it looked like, you know, we were not doing everything. We had Sonic in our back pocket. And while we would love to go and show the world Sonic, we wanted to make sure that it was being held, you know, closer to the Super Nintendo launch, so that we could really use it when we needed it to as a 1-2 punch against Nintendo. And if that meant that we were going to go into the January CES and have not so great a show, that was a decision that we made. SOJ, you know, wanted to go and show everything that they had, you know, just in hope that people would say, yeah, we've got exciting things coming. Maybe we should buy a Mega Drive. And so it was, we had a very, very different strategic orientation, and we stuck to our strategy because we believed in it and felt that the long-term strategy was much more important than a short-term gain. Right. Right. And I was actually working for Sega of America and got this global title. What Sega wanted was they wanted more Sonic. They would love more Sonic Tuesdays, and for the good of what was happening. There was a feeling that there was an opportunity for more of a global perspective, and you know, if anyone was going to come up with the next Sonic Tuesday, it was going to be me. And so I was given this new position, but I was kind of like a diplomat without a portfolio. Because when I was in Japan, I was an SOA employee. When I was in Europe, I was an SOA employee. When I was in the US, they really weren't sure what I was. And so I had lost control over what it was. And so it was an important thing, but you really can't go and create, a great promotion and a great event about something unless you have responsibility for the software, which I no longer had. I can't. It's hard to go and say, "Hi, all those products that you're controlling, I'm going to go and take over the marketing for it." And it's also hard to, the other thing that I said was the goal here is not to go and create a global marketing campaign, one size fits all, because what works in Europe is very different from what works in Japan, which is very different from what works in the US. And what I did with Sonic Tuesday was, the parameter is it's going to be a street date of Sonic Tuesday. The only other thing that we're controlling is the screenshots. You only get to release these screenshots on these days, so that we're all giving the same thing worldwide. So therefore, people aren't seeing different things, and which just goes and we're telling the same consistent story. Whatever you want to do with that, you go and create yourself. And that's why Sonic Tuesday worked, is everybody created campaigns for their own markets around the Sonic Tuesday theme. And that was very successful. And it's hard to go and do that running a global marketing business when you don't have control over at least one market to say, now we're going to go and expand this to the rest of the world. So it was a very strange time, but I understand why the position was done, and it also got me to spend a lot more time in Japan as I started seeing more of the fractures start coming.
Tell us about the fractures and then your decision to leave.
The fractures were there were lots of people in middle management who were now starting to move up, who were not happy with the success of Sega of America. And it's we're not sure exactly why it was. We've done a lot of speculation. Is there jealousy? Probably. Is there resentment that they can't go and duplicate it for whatever reasons? Probably. Was there, wait a minute, we're the parent, they're the child. Shouldn't they be listening to us more? Because we know best. Yeah, probably. I think it's all about those. And as those people started rising in the organization, their voices had a louder voice to them. And so I think there was more of a desire to, clamp down on Sega of America because, we know best. So it was a very strange thing. And because, we were the major profit producer to Sega worldwide, we were the major volume producer to Sega worldwide, and we must have been doing something right. But I think there were a long history of this concern and resentment that was going on, and there were a lot of times when we heard reports of Nakayama-san going and saying, "Why can't you do what Sega of America is doing? Why can't you produce the results they're doing?" And that's not easy to hear over a long period of time. I'm sorry we were so successful. You know,
the money went over there.
You know, it was just a very, very strange time.
You know,
sorry, go.
Oh, I was gonna say, it kind of sounds like that old saying, "Everybody hates a winner."
Yeah, and well, you know, and the other thing is if you look at what we're doing, and you know, we were doing wild and crazy things. It's probably not easy to understand where are they coming up with this stuff. They want to do what? And so but it was all about coming from a U.S. mindset, and Europe was being, you know, as innovative, and they were succeeding. So it's hard to be able to go and do that. You know, people say, "Do you understand, you know, what the advertising was in Japan?" And I said, I've seen the ads, but I don't understand the cultural context that they're coming from. And so I can't go and comment, are they good or are they bad? You know, I could tell you, are they going to go and work in the US? But I can't go and tell you if they're right for Europe, which is why I wanted to go and with Sonic Tuesday, you do what you think's right. You know, let's share resources, let's share ideas. You know, instead of going and spending $20,000 doing a piece of artwork, you know, if there's something you like, we're going to go and share it so that everybody can go and use it. And so we had good coordination there, but still doing individual things. But it was a really strange time. And I was not being very effective in the position, because I wasn't able to go and work from a base and have control over, the software where I could go and build something to build upon. And I was spending 80% of my time on planes, and I don't sleep on planes. And so it just was not good. And so, and I was starting to see these changes, and Tom and I looked to see what possible solutions there were. And I don't fault Tom or anybody else at Sega of America. It's just that it was time for me to move on, which I was unfortunate, and none of us wanted it. But there just wasn't a good solution at that time. So I left. I left the Hedgehog.
How hard was that for you to do?
Oh, it was very hard because I bled Sonic Blue, and I had been there from when Sega, management was 4 people, and then we had a repair center in the back, and we had about 20 game counselors, and that's what Sega of America was in 1989. And and built it from where we were an asterisk with 5% market share into where we were the market leader, and it was a part of a great team, and a great team that we are still all friends to this day, and we work with each other to this day on various different projects, and we talk regularly. And so, it was hard to go and leave that team. But, my life had totally changed. I needed to get out of a plane, and I needed to start doing some, get back to where I could go and be effective again. And I wish it had been at Sega, and I totally understand this. Things had changed where, there wasn't a way for me to be shoehorned back in. So it was a very strange and difficult time, but it was the best for both of us.
Al, what are you up to nowadays?
Right for the last 20 years, I have been running my own marketing consultancy, working with a variety of clients from small to big, and doing everything from strategy, helping them on market research, situation analysis, promotions, and I've worked over the years in just a variety of industries: kids, teens, tweens, toys, sporting goods, apps. The work that I'm primarily involved in right now is on digital education. And so that's where I'm probably spending the most of my time, is on how people are going to learn in the future.
Same as Tom, right?
That is yes. In the mega category, it is. It's in different ways. But that's where it's just it's a hot category right now, and it's so it's where people are learning and experimenting and seeing what's there, and it's also very interesting learning about the needs of students today, the needs of instructors and institutions today, and how digital, from a smartphone to an iPad, are impacting lives.
Oh, absolutely.
It's more than just writing, papers about Fugu.
Yes, and I was going to say, I've actually...
I think I'm now going to go and recommend some Fugu apps for education. So,
yeah, absolutely should. It's really, the digital trends have really been interesting for me to watch from inside the industry. I've been in adult learning for 10 years now, maybe almost 11, and it's all very cutting edge with technology and digital delivery. And now I am just now back in college, and to go from that to a traditional classroom feels like going back in time to back when Sega was ruling the video game industry.
Well, I think you're right, and the thing is the term typical classroom really is kind of a misnomer these days. There's flip learning and hybrids, and it's just, and then online learning, and and then colleges are offering, okay, here's the course, but there's 5 different ways you can learn. And it's like, what style really reflects how do you learn best? And there's a possibility that you could end up in the wrong kind of learning environment and not learn because that's not your way to go and do that. And then there's the differences in terms of you get a lot of people who are returning back to school, and so therefore where they're coming from is very different from somebody who's just graduated high school. And how do you go and work on those? And then you've got differences in teachers, some who are very open to digital solutions, while others are less savvy from there. Yeah. So it's a very interesting landscape these days.
I had one professor last semester who wouldn't even let you take notes digitally.
Yeah, that's it's been interesting listening and talking to both teachers and students, and also institutions, about what the challenges are, and being able to adapt to those. So I find it fascinating, and I like fascinating things. So fits in perfectly.
It is absolutely fascinating. Al, you're amazing, man. I just got to tell you, I can talk to you for 3 more hours if you'd let me.
It's there. Were there any questions that people had sent in that we didn't cover?
Let's see. There was one about how did you handle Master System marketing, or did you work with that while in conjunction while the Genesis was roaring?
Well, it wasn't initially, because Tonka still had it during the early days, and then Paul got the rights back from Tonka to do Master System. It was just a very small part of the business. We hired a director, Judy Lang, to go and manage that business, and so it was primarily a software business. Very, very little hardware that we sold, even at a lower price. And then it was just finally time to pull the plug on hardware. We did sell some software because it was easy to do if you were going to do a Game Gear title, a port to Master System was very, very easy. But there wasn't a market for it in the US at any price. People were upgrading and they didn't want the 8-bit system. They wanted, 16-bit.
And follow up to that is there why do you think it was maybe more successful in the UK and Europe and with Tectoy in Brazil than it was in the US market? Was it because of Tonka's handling of marketing or something else?
Well, first of all, in those markets, Sega was the first mover into 8-bit. They were there before NES was. And in the US, NES had already established themselves as a market force because they had, they were the phoenix. They had resurrected the industry from the ashes. And so they had established a good base in the US, and Sega was just, late to the game. Tectoy is, I have nothing but great things to say about Tectoy. Stefano and his team just were very, very aggressive, and were able to go and really fine tune it for the Brazilian market, including doing, their own software and doing their own licensed deals, Ayrton Senna's racing. It all started out of Tectoy. And, they just did a phenomenal business down there. And it was a joy to go and be able to go and work with them. They utilized us, to go and help them. And so I had been down there and done lots of interviews with a lot of the publications and the game magazines that were there. We wanted to go and help them. In Europe, once again, Sega was the first mover with the Master System, if I remember correctly. NES came in later. And so, there's something to be said about being a first mover, except for Saturn in the US, because you need to go and be the first mover, in the right way. And so, that was there. The other thing was to Tonka, it was just another product line for them. And video games do require a major investment. But I think that given what they had on their plate or what they were facing with Nintendo, and being highly aggressive in the marketplace, I think Tonka did a good job. But it was time for us to be able to go and restart. One of the things when I first was interviewing with Sega, the decision had not been made that Sega was actually going to be marketing the 16-bit system. That decision had not been made. I was being interviewed with the anticipation that if the decision was made, I would be heading at marketing. So I was interviewing for a job that might not exist. And one of the things and Atari was the company that was in the running, was foremost in the running.
Right. And I heard that they were going to call it Tomahawk.
Well, I've read that too. I know nothing about that. We never heard the Tomahawk name. But we knew that they were talking about it. And one of the strangest things I ever had to do as part of an interview was I had to go back and create a presentation that SOA was going to present to SOJ as to why SOA should have the rights to market this new system, and why SOA would be a better choice than Atari. Think about that for a minute. That's
we probably wouldn't be Sega fans if Atari got its hands on it.
Yeah, and I guess and they did present it, and I don't think they ever said that it was for me, but that was okay because if they were successful, I'd get the job. But I had to go and create the opportunity for my own job via this presentation. And it's like, here's from a market standpoint why it's important for Sega to create to do their own destiny. One of the other things was so not only that, but there was also simultaneous talk about, this is where it gets really strange. If Sega took back the marketing and didn't give it to Atari, there was also this second line of discussions that were going on about Sega taking the rights over for the Atari Lynx. So it would be the Sega Lynx.
That would have been cool.
And so I would be
Wow.
introducing at CES not just Genesis, but Lynx. Talk about a 1-2 punch. But we did not know if it was going to happen. And, you know, I'm planning out a CES booth, and it's kind of like, okay, if it happens, Lynx will go over here, you know, and it was very strange. But as you know, it never came to be.
Do you know why? Like it was decided against?
I don't know why, and quite honestly, at that time, you know, I was running around, you know, doing 90 million things simultaneously, and so I didn't want to ask about. I had no time to ask about what is shouldas and couldas. I was just focused on I got to get this thing into the marketplace. But you know, it was one of the strange things. Like, okay, we can do that. That would be a good story.
Yeah, because then they would have both launched at the same time.
They would have both
together.
launched at the same time.
Wow, that would have been incredible.
It would have. It would just be.
Wow.
I mean,
you know,
Lynx is good hardware.
It was good hardware. It was a battery eater. You know, it was well, no, but it was. If I remember correctly, it was a worse battery eater than Game Gear.
It was.
Yeah, it absolutely was.
And
Or it absolutely is. I have one.
yeah, no, blast processing. The name was not developed by Goodby Berlin. That came internally. So that was that.
Okay.
Okay, that was Goodby Berlin was very much in favor of doing blast processing and having it because they thought it was something that they could do some great ads against, and they did.
Right.
But they did not come up with the name.
So they must have been in charge of that drag racing commercial against Mario Kart.
About against the milk truck, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that was it's you know, once I saw, you know, some of the questions about advertising, I went back and I just looked at a bunch of all of the great old ads that Goodby.
Oh.
Yeah, my favorite was the Game Gear versus Game Boy one, where the guy's playing in black and white and he hits himself in the head with like a stick or something, and then it's like the world's view from a dog, and you don't want to be a dog.
Yeah, well, the dog ad where it was going back and forth between, you know, Game Gear, where the dog is actually going back and forth between Game Gear and Game Boy. You know, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That was the one Nintendo just went, you know, apoplectic over. They did, you know, they took every punch that we had given them until that one. That was.
I think Tom mentioned something about that too. Now that you say it.
Yeah, they just that was the one that
was
finally got to them, which was really cool.
No, it's so funny.
You know, my favorites were the Streets of Rage commercials. I think the two Streets of Rage commercials were wonderful. One is the one with the operating room. You know, is that his head? And then the one where they're tweaking the kid's ears, and then he plays Streets of Rage 2, and they bring him the cookies because he's now the hero. So you know, there just lots of, and then I also like the Get Sonic 2 free ad, the Slice It, Dice It, and even make julienne fries. Just the idea of the julienne fries coming out of the bottom of a Sonic game box was wonderful.
Oh yeah,
and you know, they just it was just it was the best advertising pitch any of us had ever seen in our careers, and they had done their work and truly understood the customer. You know, they went into, I don't even know how many kids' rooms just to go and see how kids lived. And they, you know, what is on their walls. And these weren't pristine rooms that, you know, oh, these people are coming over, look at your room, clean up. No, they wanted it exactly to see how it was. And in the hotel ballroom where they set up, they actually built a kid's room based upon one of the kids who they did. And it was everything. They went out and bought everything that this kid had, from the walls to the dirty clothes.
Wow.
So we could really get into the understanding. It was just amazing. And we thought that one of the other pitches we thought was the one that nothing could beat. And this just went miles beyond. And then, of course, it was Welcome to the Next Level, which was actually a very Welcome to the Next Level only lasted about 6 months. It disappeared because it wasn't the tagline that resonated with everybody. It did its initial job, and it helped us with Sega CD, but that wasn't what resonated. Everybody wanted the Sega Scream.
Oh yeah, well didn't they do like?
Can't blame them.
So I feel like I still remember seeing like the Welcome to Next logo like in the corner of things like.
There were, but it wasn't every commercial Welcome to the Next Level ended with Welcome to the Next Level, and some of them would be made out of dog bones and things like that.
Oh yeah.
And then it just became just like a little bug in it. So because it had done its job, and it was more about the look and the style and the tonality of the commercials, and then punctuated by the Sega Scream, which really was the tonality of what Sega was. So it was very interesting there. So it was great. Any other great questions from that?
Yeah. User asked, who is Sega of America's favorite third-party developer?
I don't have an answer for that. I really didn't work with them. We had a third-party team who worked with them on a daily basis, and so they're the best ones. I would meet with them probably twice a year at CES, where I would talk about the state of the Genesis industry and the state of Sega, and get to answer their questions about it. So that was really my only input to them. Or when I would be in Japan, they would go and Nakayama would invite third parties to come over and meet with me to help them come on board. But who were our favorites, I don't know.
So we've talked about, obviously you love Console Wars. That was one of the questions. Like, what do you like about? Do you like the book? Obviously, I can tell you're a fan.
I'm a fan because it's been interesting over the years to read about what our strategy was and what we did, and it was also interesting to read quotes from me that I had never said in my life. And it was also interesting to go and read facts about what we had done at Sega, and which were nowhere near reality. But if it's on the internet, it must be true.
Sure.
There was a lot of true stuff out there and things like that. And, we had done, some interviews with various things, but they were just short things, and that was out there. And, when Blake first approached Tom about this, Tom's response was, yeah, it sounds like a great idea, but you're only going to sell 200 copies. Who'd be interested in it? And Blake went and said, no, there's a great opportunity here. And they had a lot of long talks, spanning months, until Tom was really finally convinced, because Blake had done his research. He asked questions that he had done research on, and had the base and understanding of what was going there. And so Tom, agreed to work with him and on the book and cooperate with him. And then one day I get an email from Tom that says, I've given your name to this guy, Blake Harris, who's writing a book, about Sega versus Nintendo. I'm fully cooperating with him, and that's enough for me. Because if Tom has vetted him, he's got to be the real deal, and found out that he was. And then just Blake started, then expanding, to Sega employees, Nintendo employees, third parties, the retailers, the analysts out there. And, it was interesting because every week I'd get a phone call or an email from one of my old colleagues who had never done interviews with anyone and go, "Who's this Mike Harris guy? What do I tell him?" and the answer was always the same. Tell him as much as you want. Tell him as little as you want. It's up to you. All I can say is Tom and I are fully cooperating with him. And for the most part, people would go and talk with him. There were some people who didn't want to talk to him, and that was fine. That was their decision. But it was amazing how many people he had talked to. Nintendo was not as excited about talking to him. And the other interesting thing, which is that before he sold the book rights to Console Wars, to a publisher, he sold the film rights first, which was amazing. Because normally, here's the book, it's going to come out. Oh, it's a book. Okay, we'll do a film on it. No, Seth Rogen and Scott Rudin and Evan Goldberg were so excited by what it could be, they bought the film rights, and then also agreed to finance the documentary. And then they sold. HarperCollins came on board and did the book, and then Sony came on board and said, we'll distribute the movie. So it's just incredible what it's been done. I think that he's done a great job telling, the inside world of what it was like back in the console wars. He got our tonality right and what we were like very right. I still remember one email that Tom got from one of our colleagues in Japan, and the guy swore that Tom wrote the book because, as he turns each page, he can hear Tom speaking those words. And we say that about all the rest of us. Yes, that's me, that's Tom, that's Ellen Beth, etc. He's gotten who we are, and he's been able to go and take these stories and really show why they were significant. Why was Buster Douglas so important to the Sega story? It was a failure that turned into a major success for us. And not just that, we were able to take a game that everybody thought we should just go and, put in the ET dump in New Mexico. We turned it into a nice revenue producer for us, but it was more important about what it did for our overall branding stance at Sega. And then, being able to go and give other insights, whether it was the story about Fugu or the story about us, working overnight. And this was the senior management working overnight to redo our entire sales plan without not only not letting Nintendo and the third parties know, but without even letting the rest of Sega, our Sega team know that we were doing it, because we didn't want to go and let people know that you never let them see your sweat. And it just really told a great story, and he was able also, finally to get Nintendo to start talking about it, and being able to go and tell their story. So it really gives you a good insight into what was happening there. It's a great business and marketing story. There are universities now that are actually teaching cases using Console Wars in their classes, which we absolutely love. There are people who would love to know more about, the game side of it, and game development. Well, that's probably another book. The question asked, are there things that were omitted? Yeah, the book's 584 pages. The book would be double the size if Blake included everything that could be included in it. But I don't think it advances the story any more than what Console Wars already did. And the book probably wouldn't be out on the market yet if it was going to be double the size. It's going to be interesting to see what Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg do. They're, in the process of writing the movie now. They're not going to tell all 584 pages isn't going to be in there. What are they going to do to, what is the Console Wars
How does it move
portion?
to the next medium?
How does it move to the next medium? Okay. Who am I? What do I do on screen? And then there's the documentary where you actually get to go and see all of us actually talking about it. And to see me on the big screen or in, high def, Blu-ray, that's a little scary.
Who do you want to play you?
No, I will not answer that. Because, I know. Tom won't either. And yeah, we are. Yes, we're very cautious about that because.
So you're confirming that this is going to be a motion capture, and George Clooney is doing both of you. He's playing against himself.
It could be. It absolutely could be. And you never know. It's. We have not heard anything yet. Maybe they're going to come back and we'll be playing ourselves but there's going to be younger versions because it's all going to be CG. All I know is
you could serve the fugu in the scene.
I could serve the fugu. Yes, I do look like a Japanese waitress, and I could serve the fugu. But you never know, and it's going to be interesting. All I know is, the combination of Seth Evan and Scott Rudin. Scott, producer. First of all, he's EGOT. He's won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony.
Yeah.
The Book of Mormon. He's the producer behind that on Broadway. And
it's fantastic.
Small movies like The Social Network, Moneyball. That's there.
So the little ones, you've probably heard of.
TV shows, The West Wing or something like that. Never heard of it. He does nothing but great quality products. And if you look at the hits that Seth and Evan have put together, we're really excited about it. And the most exciting thing about it is Seth and Evan are gamers. They love playing games. They love playing retro games, from what I understand. They knew about Genesis and Super Nintendo, and so we're excited to go and see what happens. So yeah, I love Console Wars. I love what it's done, and but then most importantly, I just love that there's a retro gaming community that cares about the games, cares about the systems, and even cares about what we did way back when. This is
we really do.
We wouldn't be here if your work wasn't as good as it was.
Well,
I'm literally staring at my Genesis right now.
We appreciate that, and you asked me before, did I pinch myself when I was told that I was going to be working with Michael Jackson? No, I didn't pinch myself because I was too busy trying to figure out how to, game. But am I pinching myself now that there's all this interest in what we did? And it's, as I said, the old Sega team. We talk regularly, and we communicate by email at least once a week. We're pinching ourselves because we're just not believing. We went to Comic-Con 2 years ago for the Console Wars panel, and Tom and I were joking that there was going to be 50 people there in the panel room, and an hour before the panel, there were already 75 people lined up, and we're going, okay, we've already doubled our estimate. And then we filled the room and they had to close it because it could only hold X number of people for fire regulations.
Yeah, I couldn't get into that panel.
And here's all these people wanting to hear about it. And, we've had similar things. PAX East, the Portland Retro Gaming Festival, and then lots of people coming out going, "Hi, will you come on and do our podcast and talk?" Or cough, as this is the first coughing podcast I've done. It might be a new thing for me, but it's just incredible that people want to go and know more about what we did 25 years ago. It may be just so that they can get higher grades on their college papers, but I don't know. Don't know. But we really are grateful and thankful for all of this interest, not only in what we did, but in the products that we put out there. It was totally a love affair back then. We had a ball doing it. And most importantly, we wanted everybody, all of our customers out there, to love, our products as much as we did. We wanted you to love, Sonic, and Shinobi and Streets of Rage, and even Toe Jam and Earl. Well, it was amazing. Oh, I love Toe Jam and Earl. Toe Jam and Earl was one of those titles I always had space in my product lineup for. Is this going to work? Or as somebody said, the WTF titles. And you didn't know if they were either going to be a big winner or they were going to fail miserably. And what I'm very proud of at Sega was we were willing to take those chances. And so I always had 2 slots, for something that, comes in over the transom. You never know what's going to happen. Where could this be big? Could this be, huge? Or is it a failure? We really don't know. But we're willing to take that chance because, without risk, there's no reward. The other title that fit into that exact same category was Echo the Dolphin. A dolphin? Mm-hmm. You want to do a game about a dolphin? But Edmunds, and that was a game that I greenlit without seeing one storyboard, without seeing one graphic. It was just Ed talking and telling the story of Echo the Dolphin for 45 minutes straight over a bad Italian meal in Vegas. But he knew exactly what he wanted to do, how it would look, how the control would be, and helped to go and make it a classic. So those were things that was so great about what Sega was about. We were willing to go and take risks with our products. We were willing to go, except for 32X. We were willing to go and,
In and of itself was a risk,
it was,
right?
because it's kind of like, it was a risk because you're asking people to spend another $150 on another thing, but it's also getting people to spend. I'd rather have you spend that $150 on 3 cartridges than on another piece of hardware. Plus, I knew the problem that I had from day one with 32X was I knew that SOA and SOJ could never develop enough quality titles because there's only so many teams. We got teams that are trying to learn how to do CD. And how are you now going to do a third hardware, which is total new architecture that you have to go and learn? I had been through, what it took just to get people up to speed on Genesis. And now we're asking. And then the third parties. Remember how we told you CD was big? Well, you got this thing over here. And it's all about making, it wasn't that 32X was bad because it was a good hardware architecture. It's just making sure that you've got the software lineup, because the name of the game is the game. And you needed to have a strong software lineup to be able to go and get people excited and want to go and buy it. And we were just, diluting ourselves and our third parties in so many different areas that, you just can't go and be great in every single area. And so it was taking focus away from it. And as I said, I killed the product 4 times.
Was it in a different form when you killed it?
No, conceptually it was the same thing. It was always an add-on to Genesis. There was initial talk of this is going to be a separate system and a standalone and things like that. But when, once it finally started, to gel as an actual product, it was an add-on to Genesis, and it was an expensive add-on to Genesis, and it's how do you tell not only don't you have the software, but how do you tell the customer what to buy? We've been telling you, you got to buy this Sega CD. This is the next level. And we want to welcome you to the next level. Oh, wait a minute. In addition, would you spend another $150 and start another software thing? It goes back to backward compatibility, the power-based converter. That was a big selling point because we weren't going and, discontinuing all your favorite 8-bit games because you could go and play it on the Master System. As Blake says in the book, it was our best non-selling product that we ever had. Okay, because it was more. We didn't sell a lot of power-based converters. Okay, but because people could go and say, "Mom, look, all of my Master System games can still be played." That was the selling point, right? That was the value, but people didn't buy it because they just wanted to. If they wanted to play Master System games, they pulled out their Master System. But they wanted to play Genesis. But it was an important psychological point.
It was doing what Nintendo don't.
It was.
By being backwards compatible.
It was. And then it's as we got into the next generation systems, I'm starting reading design specs, and here's backwards compatibility. It's like there will be no backwards compatibility, and it's like, haven't we learned?
So what do you think? Because you were there while they were planning the next generation, the 32, 64-bit era before you left, and so we know that there was talk of a partnership with Sony to jointly release a console.
Well, it was more than talk. It was almost a reality.
We know now that there was the SGI Silicon Graphics. We found out recently that 3DO was being considered in their high-level meetings.
Well, the 3DO was much earlier, and so I wouldn't throw that into the Saturn things. The 3DO discussions started. That was like in Tom's first year.
Oh, wow!
That was just as 3DO. It had been shown, I guess, and so that was very early on. So it wasn't apples and oranges. I remember I was in the first meeting with Tom and Tripp and RJ Michael and Dave Needle. So I remember that vividly. So that was very early on in the 3DO days, so it's an important part of the Sega story. It just doesn't get into the whole mishmash of Silicon Graphics and Sony, the Sega PlayStation.
What about M2? Would be in that mix, or would that be after Saturn?
I don't know where M2 fell into the mix because it was not something that made a major impact. I think it was one of the. We talked with a lot of people, and so while I know that there were M2 talks, it wasn't something that was. I never viewed it as something that rose to a huge level, and that made me go and timeline it.
So what do you think should have happened? Should Saturn have come out? Should one of these other alternatives have happened? How close did each of them come to being real? And should Genesis have had a longer lifespan?
First, to answer your last question, absolutely. There was still life in Genesis. It's if we had continued with it, then we would have managed, the software to go and continue. and so therefore it's making sure that you have the right titles. But when you've basically been told that the platform's dead, then you can't go. You're left with just what's
resources have to move.
right. You're left with what's already in the pipeline to be able to do that. What would my druthers say? What would I want to happen? And I know that to have happened, and and I'm pretty sure Tom and a lot of other people there, we wanted the Sega PlayStation. We thought that from a hardware and a software standpoint, it was the best. We thought it was a great marriage between us and Sony for a lot of reasons. And we would have been bringing our software expertise, so we could be able to go and develop great titles for it. And we were also on the American side very comfortable with the relationship. We had a very, very strong relationship with Olaf Olofsson, Mickey Shuloff, and a lot of other people at Sony. And we just think that that could have been a game changer. The combination of the two would have been something very, very strong.
You're teasing a whole better universe than the one we live in right now.
It's
a Sony Sega partnership, Sega would still be in hardware today.
It would have been amazing. And we were excited.
Sega PlayStation 4
on the Dreamcast 5 right now.
Yeah.
How close did it come? It was a go. Everybody had signed off, with the exception of Sega Japan. And it was presented to SOA was ready to do it. All of Sony was ready to do it, and it was presented to Sega Japan, and they turned it down and said no, and which is perfectly their right to go and do. But we think strategically it was not the right decision. Yeah. I will let history speak for itself. I won't speak for history, but that is what I would have liked to do. Besides that, then there has to be a next generation system, and we had a lot of competing designs for it. The Saturn design, the SGI design. And there were other designs that, and I've read a lot of design papers, and quite honestly, I hope I never have to read another console design document.
Were there any other ones that we haven't mentioned that you could tell us about?
No, it was just stuff internally in terms of, it's you basically take the same chips and everything like that, and it's just okay. Here's you do 10% more here, you do 10% less here, and so it's all basically the same stuff. And there's, I'm sure the hardware engineers will be able to go and say, no, there's much bigger differences than that. But then I'm not a hardware engineer, because I care about the game. I don't care about the name of the game is the game. It's not about what's under the hood. It reminds me back to after. At the 91 June Consumer Electronics Show, when Nintendo had their big press conference before the show to introduce Super NES to the world and tell it why it is going to be the big thing and it's going to be the de facto standard of 16-bit and forget about anybody else. And as soon as that press conference ended, a reporter for a major national magazine came running out of the press conference and had made a beeline for our booth, and sees me and Tom, and it looks like he has just got the ultimate scoop, and he is just going to take us down. You could see the look in his eye, which was interesting because we had a good relationship with him, but I guess he loved Nintendo, and he didn't even say hello. He went and said, Super Nintendo has 32,768 colors. You only have 512. What are you going to do about it? That was his welcome. And this was, 1 minute after the show had opened. And so I just went and, put my finger up, follow me. And we walked over to a wall in the booth where we had 2 monitors, and one was showing the demo from Super NES or Super Famicom for Super Mario World. And on top of it was Sonic the Hedgehog running its auto demo mode. And these are the auto demo modes that the manufacturers have put in, so it must be showing the best stuff. And I said to him, which one has 32,768 colors? Because Sonic was just so much more vibrant, the Green Hill Zone and everything like that. And, the guy was speechless. And I went and I said, it's not how many colors you have, it's what you do with them. And he just walked away silently. And, it was just an amazing type of thing. It all comes down to, it comes down to the software. The name of the game is the game. And so, I think that, what the underlying hardware, yeah, it's important. You want it to do as much as possible, but, can you have a great dev system that the developers can go and make great games on, and to do incredible new things that people have never seen before? What's going to be the next Sonic? What's going to replace them? What can you go and do that's fun and exciting with them? The problem with Saturn was it was rushed. I'm not saying that the hardware was rushed. The introduction was rushed.
Yeah, notoriously so.
Tom, where Tom couldn't go and supply all of the retailers with products. Tom goes and tells the story about how there are retailers to this day who won't talk to him because of what he did to them on Saturn and couldn't go and give them the product. And it wasn't his fault. It was like SOJ says, you're going to launch it, and you're only getting these many pieces. And there wasn't enough software. And it was expensive. But it's available now in New York at these select retailers. And it's not the way to do a launch. And, everyone at SOA knew that. And I knew that. I was sitting in the audience when, that presentation was made, and my jaw dropped because I couldn't believe what was happening. And, it was out of SOA's control. And it was a self-fulfilling prophecy that, it's hard to come back from a start like that. And there was also the focus was very much not necessarily on the games, but also on what the hardware could do.
As the new technology was coming out, it was
just
more the eye catcher.
Yeah, it was just it's there's ways to go and do that. When we launched Genesis, we only had 5 titles. It was tough, and luckily we were able to go and
But like you said, it's that next generation of software.
Yeah, it's that next generation of software, and luckily our 5 titles were better than Bonk's Revenge, and so we were able to go and I like Bonk. Bonk's a fine game, but we were able to go and get NEC out of the way, so therefore we could start telling the world what Nintendo don't. Saturn wasn't the way, and then Dreamcast was a fine piece of hardware. There was good software to it.
What did you think of the initial marketing for Dreamcast? I always wanted to know what you thought about the 999 campaign.
Yeah, I thought 999 was a nice hook. And I don't remember a lot about the Dreamcast campaign. I wasn't paying a lot of attention to it. It was kind of like and I think all of us from the original team were just, taking a break from Sega. I think we needed, a time to just let it go. Let it go. Okay, I'm doing Frozen now. I've gone from Galaxy Quest to Frozen. And
as somebody who lapsed on Saturn completely,
yeah.
the Dreamcast was my real return to Sega.
Well, I think that was there. I actually met with Nakayama because he was looking for somebody to go and head up Sega at that time, and they were talking to me, and it was just like, I'm not the person to be your CEO, and and so that's a piece of news that probably hasn't made it. As they talk about.
Yeah.
No, we just had one meeting, and I said, if you want to talk to me about, heading up your marketing organization, then that might be something that we could go and talk about. But he was interviewing a number of people to be the CEO, and I was the only former Sega person that was there, and it was actually interesting. As I was leaving my meeting, Bernie Stolen was walking in. So it was like, and there was. And so Bernie was the right person. The original modem that was shown back in 1989, and if you actually look in the original sales materials for Sega Genesis, you will see the Telegenesis modem, which is this little modem that plugs onto the back and allowed you. It only came out in Japan, and the best.
I think Tectoy put one out too.
The Mega modem, but I think it was a different design. And the best thing about the Telegenesis modem was the name. I thought it was a great name, that was something. The latency was just horrendous on it, and it had like 2 sports games, and that was about it. And it was just something that never came to fruition. But it was in for 1989. It was on our posters that were included in it. It was on the back of the box, and we talked about. But I didn't drop the ball on it. SOJ dropped the ball. It just didn't proceed anywhere. But it had a great name. Telegenesis was a great name. Yes. Well, that's true. So that was interesting. But Dreamcast, don't ask me. I just
You opted out of that one.
Well, I think we all opted out. I think we're just all so tired, and it was just like, that's it. And then just watch Sega from there, from the sidelines.
Do you have an opinion on Sega today, and if you had advice for them?
I won't give them the advice because it would cost them a lot of money.
Good point.
I'm very excited by. First of all, I like the attention that's being given to Sonic on his 25th anniversary, and so I like that. I like that they're honoring Sonic from that standpoint. I am very heartened by the comments that Satomi-san has made about an emphasis on quality and really putting game quality at the forefront. So I'm excited about that. I can't wait to see what is going to be unveiled at the party at Comic-Con. And so I'm looking forward to that. And so, it's I have nothing but great anticipation about what Sega is going to be doing in the future. They've got a great IP stable, and I think they can go and do exciting things. It should be interesting. but I have zero information. You know, and so it's who knows? We'll see it. We'll see at Comic-Con what's going on. But you know, I wish them the best. I want Sega to succeed. I want Sonic to succeed. You know, it's amazing that after 25 years, you know, Sonic is still beloved, and you know, people are interested in him. You know, in animation, they're interested in the TV in animation, in you know what Archie's been doing with their comics, and it's time to return to really great Sonic games. And I'm still amazed that Puyo Puyo is so humongous in Japan. So, well, it's the amount of revenue that is coming from Puyo Puyos in Japan is supposed to be huge. I forget, it was like the number 3 grossing puzzle game or something in Japan. It's amazing.
Okay, there's one more user question, which was, did you use psychologists in your marketing?
And they also asked if we had maxims. No, we didn't. We didn't have.
Yes.
The only maxim we had was the name of the game is the game. No, we did not have maxims. You know, what it was all about was, you know, having a strong strategy, following that strategy, which enabled us to go and meet our objectives, and then going from there, and you know, making the most of everything that we did. You know, a lot of it all came out of what the software was and what we're going to, you know, propose. Sonic Tuesday would not be right for any other title that was you know, in the lineup. It was keyed directly to that, and so we based what we did around what we had to work with, and because that's what we wanted to showcase. We used, our number one goal was to sell more hardware. It wasn't to go and sell more Sonics. Okay, the strategy was to go.
You weren't the Sonic company. You were the Sega company.
We were the Sega company, and well, the thing is if you've got a Genesis, then you're going to go and buy software for it. If you've got a Sonic, you know, cartridge, that doesn't mean you're going to buy anything else. And we would use software to sell hardware. You know, Sonic sold. Sonic 2 was the thing that put us over the top by getting new users onto Genesis, and that's what enabled us to get market share, the number 1 market share, because you use the software to sell the hardware. And so those were the important things. And, you know, that's why it was important to go and, you know, take such loving and effective care against all of our software titles to make sure that they were presented in the best way and advertised in the best way, promoted in the best way, working with the game magazines so that the game magazines were as excited about it as we were. And it was a very carefully orchestrated dance. And at times it may have looked like we were, you know, just, you know, going blindly and wildly at the time. It was all planned. You know, it was planned wild and craziness, except for the night where we had to go and do the all-nighter. That was not planned. But you do what you have to do. And the most important thing about what it was, we had the right team to go and do it. All of us would work together, you know, any day of the week. And because we loved what we were able to accomplish and we loved working with each other. And the results went and spoke for themselves. And we all agree it was the best time in our careers. And we've done a lot of exciting things in our careers, but nothing beat those Sega days. And no, we didn't have psychologists. Okay, even though people, you know, I've been accused of being crazy and insane. We didn't use psychologists.
Well, I will say you definitely made it one of the best times of my childhood.
Well, thank you. You know,
thank you so much.
Well, that's what it was all about, was how are our players going to respond? Because we wanted you to have an emotional reaction to everything we did. And
would you anticipate blind loyalty 25 years after the fact?
No, we that's what's so shocking to us, and we can't believe that this is happening, but believe me when I say you don't know how grateful we are that all of you care about what we did. When we talk amongst ourselves, it is a pinch me experience, and we're humbled and we're grateful that you all care. We're humble. I go to Comic-Con and look at all the Sonic cosplay. And the thing you have to remember about Sonic was, I chose Sonic as our next character, as the character, because he was the lesser of two evils.
What was the
alternative? Shinobu Toyota. This was the only other time when they came up and said to me, Nakayama has chosen you. And Nakayama, there was the big character contest, and they came down with 2 finalists, and Japan was happy with both of them. But Nakayama, who was very prescient, said that if this is going to be our mascot, if this is going to be, what he wanted, our Mario killer, it has to work in the United States. Because if it doesn't work in the United States, we'll never achieve, what we need from a revenue, sales standpoint, branding standpoint, et cetera. Global domination. And so, Shinobu says, this is your choice. Which one? And the first one was this egg thing, which reminded me of Weebles. Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. And in the US, it came off as very, very preschool. Did I understand why it would work in Japan? Absolutely. Once again, different tastes. And I could see it being a perfect fit for the Japanese market. But for the US, unless I'm going to be selling to 3 to 5-year-olds, this ain't it. And by the way, I didn't have any game designs. I didn't have any descriptions. I just had a drawing. And then the next thing is, I have this thing, and there's this thing that says across the top, Sonic the Hedgehog. And here's this. First of all, what's a hedgehog? We know groundhogs. We don't know nothing about no hedgehogs. And he's blue, and he's got, these spikes. And then there's this rock band behind him being played by these weird animals. And it's like, okay. And then there's this woman who's kind of Marilyn Monroe-esque and has got the name Madonna. And it says it's his girlfriend. And I'm going, what?
Well, he's part of the Pepsi generation.
I could have been. And I'm just going like, this is crazy, but then it's like my alternative is the Weebles, the eggs. And Sonic was the lesser of two evils. And I picked Sonic. And I said to Shinobu, get rid of the rock band and get rid of Madonna. Because I wasn't sure who was going to sue me first, Marilyn Monroe or Madonna. Just, and it was like, didn't need that. And when you have a rock band, I'm thinking Gem and the Holograms here, and by the way, I love the theme for a song for Gem and the Holograms, but music is very particular and could turn you on or turn you off. And I don't need that mishigas. And, just get rid of that. But it was there, and they showed it to Mike Katz, and Mike Katz is going like, are you out of your mind? But the American decision had been made. I chose Sonic, and I didn't expect to see anything, of that. And, fast forward a few months, and I'm in Japan going through R&D, and they're on a dev system and kind of wireframe. I see this thing just speeding through a level, and I'm going, and it's like a blur, and I'm get closer, and I'm going, it's that Sonic guy, black and white, and I just couldn't believe the speed. And running through the Green Hill Zone, kind of as I said, it was kind of in wireframe, didn't have any backgrounds to it, and it was in black and white, and it's like, wow, that's amazing. I'm going, that's on a Genesis, yeah. And then they take me over to another dev system, and here are the backgrounds for the Green Hill Zone, and the beautiful multicolored backgrounds. And I'm going, can the Genesis handle putting those backgrounds together with that speed and that animation? And they go, yeah, we can do that. And I just went crazy. It was like, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like, I went back to SOA, and Paul Rio and Shinobu talk to this day about, I couldn't stop talking about Sonic and what I had seen. It was just so amazing. It was like, they are on the path to going and pulling off what they wanted to do, which I thought was crazy, of coming up with, and did it. And then we finally got, a build which had the backgrounds with the game. And, it's like, okay, we got to just keep this under our hat. This was just too important. And then we started limiting access to what people could know about Sonic. And because we knew that it had the potential to be the secret weapon against the launch of Super NES.
It was the ace up your sleeve.
It was, and the timing was absolutely perfect. But if I had thunk it, but then we had to go and have all the time of, we had to defang him, and we had to make him more approachable. I called Madeline.
You had to go through customs.
Yeah, I had I called Madeline Sonic's orthodontist, because it was her job to go and tell Naka and the team to get rid of the fangs. And then we had to go and soften him, but still give him this edge and accentuate the attitude that had already been there by just the tapping of the toe when you don't go and control the touch the controller. And it's amazing how a small little thing like that can really affect what you're going to go and do. We didn't need psychologists to do that.
It says so much through body language.
Yeah. Yeah. No psychologist needed to go and do that. It's like, okay, Sonic's got this attitude, and we're going to go to make sure that's going to go and affect how we're going to introduce this and how we're going to go and market it. And when we went head to head with them at CES, it was, I think they probably weren't happy about that, but it did the job. It took some of the luster off of the launch of Super NES, and then when I was going to be so nice, because I'm a nice guy, as you can tell from the couple of hours we spent together, that I thought that there was nothing that I could be more helpful than to go and actually introduce Super NES for Nintendo, because they needed all the help they could get. And that's the nice guy that I am. And so that's why I went and, we did the road show, the mall tour, where we let you play Super NES, which everybody wanted to play about. They had heard about it, but nobody had seen it because it wasn't coming out for another 2 months. And the nice guys at Sega were going to let you play Super Mario World. Okay? Who could go and not want to do that? Of course, we did force you also to play Sonic. Okay? You have to, so if you want to play Super NES, you got to play Sonic too. Or Sonic. And then we made you vote which one you preferred. How dare we? And the highest percentage of wanting Sonic over Mario was in Nintendo's backyard. We were 5 miles from Nintendo's headquarters, and they chose more people there chose Sonic than Mario. And the lowest percentage that we had was 80% choosing Sonic. And it was just, and these were people who had a pent-up demand. They wanted to see Mario so badly.
Yeah, and this is overnight with very little to no public exposure for Sonic.
Yeah, nobody had seen Sonic.
Mario's the thing that people are hyped for.
Well, it was,
I was one of
Yeah.
them too as a kid, and I ended up. I knew my parents had already bought me a Super Nintendo for Christmas that year, but I ended up. My friends had
Yeah.
Sega Genesis with Sonic, and I said, "Hey, what I really want for Christmas is this thing. What if it's already
Yeah.
been bought?
Take it back.
Take it back. Genesis is
Well,
cheaper
that,
anyway. Save some money."
and that was it.
Give me an extra game.
And that was it for me. And Christmas '92 was the most memorable
You know?
Christmas of my life. And because you say how much you appreciate it. I appreciate it. What you guys did. So much, like being. Especially from that era. The book's called
Mhm.
Console Wars, and it was like that. Nintendo versus Sega kids. And I
Oh,
grew
yeah.
up Sega, like blue Sega. And it becomes like a part of your identity a little
Absolutely.
bit. And
You grow up, you
And,
want
you
to
know,
identify with something.
you made it stick with us the rest of our lives, and it's just a
Well,
beautiful
we're
thing.
happy to go and do that. But yeah, you talk about that. We're at home Christmas Day, and we're thinking about all of you who are opening up the Genesis system for the first time or opening up their copy of Sonic 2. And we know how many people have bought it for Christmas, and it's just like, this is unbelievable. And so it was amazing from that standpoint. But it's you just do the research. We started early on when I was talking about when we did the play tests around the United States, where we let people play Super Mario World and let them play Sonic, and none of these people had ever seen either game, because one was only out in Japan and Sonic was a top secret thing. And we both let them play for a while and then tell us what they liked. And we had stacked the deck in the crazy way of having, primarily people who said that they loved Mario. And we were able to go and see how strongly we were able to go and convert Mario people into Sonic people and say, they love Sonic. And it all came back from, this is Tom's guidance when he uttered those two words, because I told him that this is what, we had a winner, and he just said to me the two words, prove it. And by doing that research, it enabled us to go and do this entire thing, going out there and letting the world know.
Wow.
It's just amazing how small things can just have, these tremendous impacts. So it was fun.
It was wonderful. All right.
I don't have an answer to the question that was, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that one. And that's the one that's kept me up a lot. So
I guess because I don't know. It's just too hard to think of great questions to ask you. Yeah, the last one was the only one that we haven't addressed was the RPG question. Was it difficult selling role-playing games when they were more expensive? And then there was one from us. If you can confirm that Michael Jackson was involved in Sonic 3. And that's all of our questions.
The answer to that is, well is a relative term. Okay. RPGs did sell, despite their high price, did sell well. Does that mean that they were top 10 in volume or top 20 in volume? No. But they were very respectable in volume. They very consistent. We had a very loyal RPG audience, so that we knew that if we were coming out with an RPG, we were going to go and sell X number of units. It was a given, because people they would scarf them up. They wanted RPGs, and despite their incredibly high price, because they were the highest meg size, and you got the battery backups and everything like that. So they were good, and the number would go up a little bit if it got really a lot of talk about it. But we had a loyal RPG audience. And in fact, my dental hygienist, every 6 months when I went in for a cleaning, all she would talk about is Phantasy Star 2. And that was fine. She wanted RPGs. So the RPG business was great for us. I personally wanted to do more RPGs. The problem was it's a tremendous cost and time for localization. There's nothing that takes more time because there's just so much text involved, and it has to be context sensitive so that you've actually translated right. So it's taking a ton of time. It's taking the time of my product managers away from their other duties, and unfortunately the volume was not enough where I could go and devote just one product manager who would just go and do RPGs all year, and then we would have a lot of them coming. But I firmly believed in our RPG market. I wish we could have done, that's my failure, people. I couldn't get you more RPGs, but we needed a whole lot more volume, even though we were very happy with what it was. And I think the RPGs that Sega did were fantastic. Hey, knock us started on Phantasy Star, and it's. I wish we had done more.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the ones that we got. I'm a huge Shining Force fan.
We did have a crazy plan, and it was probably the craziest plan I ever did. But I'm not going to talk about it. I gotta save something for some time.
Well, that brings me to my question.
Yeah.
I want to know, can we ask you back later in the year, perhaps?
Sure.
And get you, because this is already going to be a two-parter. I know it. And what I kind of want to do.
I thought a three-part, just one part on my coughing.
Yeah. But you know what, too? I wanna use this for our Sonic anniversary episode.
Well, I appreciate that. I'd be happy to come back. And I've enjoyed it. You guys have asked some really great questions. Hey, I had a ball just talking about Intellivision.
I had a ball talking about that because I didn't know that we were going to be able to get that deep. I think we spent 40 minutes on early industry stuff. And it was. I love the beginning of it.
It's interesting because it was. We didn't even talk about ColecoVision, but that's one of the first comment was.
Give us more ground to cover later. That's great.
Yeah, the first comment was from the guy who's doing the Kickstarter book on ColecoVision.
He wanted me to.
Yeah, I give him a shout out. It sounds very, very interesting, and Coleco's an interesting company, and hey, Zaxxon, a Sega game. What can you say? That was fun because I haven't talked about, because everybody wants to know about the Sega thing, Sega and Sonic, who cares about that stuff? Let's talk about the early days. Let's talk about Atari, let's talk about all of those, but I've had a great career. As I said, going back to the Atari 2600s and then working over the years with, the pioneers who were there, working with Nolan, working with, Steve, what's Steve's name, who did Space War, at MIT, which a lot of people credit with as the first video game. And Steve Russell and a whole bunch of other people. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to go and do these exciting things. And it was fun to talk about, those early days today, as well as about Sega. Sega! So it's fun. Anything else, gentlemen?
Oh, not for now.
The Michael Jackson.
Oh yeah, let's yes or no.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
All right. Al, you're amazing.
I appreciate it.
And I promise you, we get you back on. We'll talk about ColecoVision. I'm a big ColecoVision fan.
Okay, cool.
All right, great. Thank you so much for talking with us.
My pleasure. You have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
You too, sir. Bye.
All right, Rob. I must eat dinner.
No, wait 5 minutes. We gotta do a wind
hold
down.
on a second. Let me just shake. Hey, so we're doing this multiple episodes.
Oh, let me stop the recording.